You have probably heard that the Amish do not carry insurance, no policy on the house, no policy on the barn, no health insurance, and they do not take Social Security or a government pension either, even though many of them paid into nothing and will collect nothing. And I suspect that when you heard it, you thought one of two things. Either that we are stubborn fools who refuse a sensible thing out of pride, or that we are somehow getting away with something. And I am here to tell you that it is neither. We do not carry insurance because we do not need it, because long ago, as a hunted and desperate people, we built something in its place that is older and stronger and warmer than any policy a company ever sold, and it does not come in the mail. It comes up your lane at daybreak with a wagon load of neighbors. Today, I am going to tell you the story of how a people came to need no insurance company at all, and it begins, as these stories so often do, with a barn on fire in the night. Stay with me. This one may change how you think about what security even means. My name is Eli. I am Amish. I keep house and property on a farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I have stood on the beams of more barn raisings than I can count. And I have watched my community carry families through fire and sickness and death without a single insurance man ever being called. And I have never once lain awake worried about what would happen to my family if disaster struck, not because I am foolish, but because I know with a certainty most modern folk have never felt about anything, exactly who would come, and how many, and how fast. Today, I am going to show you what that certainty is built on, where it came from, how a barn raising actually works, how we carry one another's burdens without the government or a company in the middle, and what it costs us because it does cost us something. But before any of that, I have to take you back to that burning barn, because it is the clearest window there is into who we are. Stay with me. Picture it. A farmer wakes in the night to a red light in his window, and he runs out to find his barn ablaze, and for all the buckets his family can carry, by morning it is gone, a black ruin of smoking timbers. His animals, some saved, some not. His hay, his tools, his harvest, gone. To a man alone in the modern world, this is ruin, a catastrophe he insures against precisely because it could break him. But this farmer is not alone, and he never was. Word goes out that very day, carried farm to farm, and there is no need to ask, because everyone already knows what happens next. And a few mornings later, at the first gray light of dawn, they come. The buggies come up the lane, dozens of them, scores of them, the whole community and the districts around it, men and boys, women and girls, the old and the young, and they bring their tools and their teams and their food, and they descend on that black ruin, and they raise him a new barn. In a single day. Let me tell you how it actually goes, because it is a wonder to see. An experienced master carpenter takes charge, and he divides the men into crews, each with its task, and the great timber frames that have been made ready are hoisted up by sheer massed muscle, wall by wall, plain men from behind heaving on ropes and pushing on poles, and the frame of that barn rises out of the ashes through the morning. By noon, it stands. And while the men are on the timbers, the women have taken over the kitchen and the yard, and they have been cooking since before dawn. And at noon, they set out a feast on long tables to feed that whole army of workers. And the children run errands and carry water and fetch tools and watch and learn, so that they will know how to do this when their turn comes to do it for someone else. And through the afternoon, the roof goes on, and the siding, and as the sun goes down, that farmer who woke a few days ago to ruin stands looking at a brand-new barn, raised by his neighbor's hands, and here is the part that stops the outside world cold. No bill is ever sent, not $1 changes hands. There is no invoice, no fee, no charge, because every man who swung a hammer that day knows with perfect certainty that his own day of trouble will come, and that when it does, these same neighbors will come up his lane at dawn and do the very same for him. And I want you to understand where this comes from, because it did not appear out of nowhere. Remember who our people are. We are the descendants of a hunted folk, Anabaptists who were driven across Europe for their faith, imprisoned, killed, stripped of their lands, allowed to trust no government and no church and no power of the world, because every one of those had turned on them. When you are a people like that, you learn a lesson down to the marrow that the only thing you can truly rely on is each other. The state will not save you, it hunts you. The wider world will not catch you, it drove you out. All you have in the end is your own people, standing together. And so our ancestors built their whole life around that one hard truth. They made the community itself into the thing that would never let them fall, because they had learned, at the cost of blood, that there was nothing else that would not fail them. The barn raising, the sharing of every burden, the refusal of the outsider's insurance, all of it grows from that root. It is a refugee people's answer to the question, who will catch us when we fall? And the answer they arrived at and have kept for 300 years is simple and total. We will catch each other. Now, I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters, because I want you to see what has really happened here and what it means. In the modern world, when disaster strikes, a man is alone with a telephone number. He calls a company far away, a company he has paid for years, and he hopes, and he waits, and he argues perhaps over what is covered and what is not, and eventually, if he is fortunate, a check arrives from a stranger. And that check is a fine thing, I will not deny it, but consider what it is and what it is not. It is money from people who do not know his name, who will never set foot on his land, who feel nothing for him at all, and it is the whole of what he receives. No one comes. He rebuilds alone, or hires strangers to do it. This is what the modern world traded away, and most folks never saw the trade being made. They gained a policy from a company, and they lost the neighbor. They gained a check, and they lost the sight of 100 people coming up the lane at dawn to carry them. We looked at that trade long ago, and we would not make it. We would rather have the neighbor. That is the whole of it. We do not carry insurance because we are the insurance, each for the other, and always have been. And it is not only barns. This same thing runs through the whole of our life. When a family is struck with a great hospital bill, the church has its funds and its ways, and the community shares that burden among them, so that no family is crushed alone by the cost of a sickness. When a man dies and leaves a widow and children, the community does not send its condolences and go home. It carries that family, works their land, sees to their needs, for years if need be. When someone is too old or too sick to work their farm, the community works it. We call this mutual aid, this bearing of one another's burdens, and it is not charity handed down from above. It is something far deeper. It is a whole people who have agreed, without ever quite writing it down, that no one among them will be allowed to fall alone. There is a verse we take very much to heart, that we are to bear one another's burdens, and we mean it not as a sentiment, but as a way of running a whole society. I have seen it with my own eyes more times than I can tell you, and it never loses its power to move me. I have seen a young father taken by sickness, his farm work undone, and his family frightened. And I have watched the men of the district simply divide his fields among themselves and work them alongside their own, week after week, planting and tending and harvesting, asking nothing, until the man was well, or God forbid, until the family could stand on its own. I have seen a great stack of hospital bills that would have crushed any single family met and paid by the quiet passing of a box among the brethren. I have seen a widow's woodshed filled without a word each fall, and her roof mended before she knew it leaked, for years and years after her husband was gone. None of this is announced. No one is thanked overmuch, for that would embarrass the giver and shame the receiver both. It is simply done the way you would breathe, because it is understood by everyone that this is what a people are for. That, and not any building or any rule, is the true church as we understand it, a body whose members cannot watch one of their own suffer alone. Now, this is also why we will not take the government's insurance, its Social Security, and the rest. And here I must be precise, so you do not misunderstand us, for this is often misunderstood. Long ago, in the 1960s, our people were granted an exemption so that old order Amish who are self-employed may be released from paying the Social Security tax. But hear this, and hear it well, because it is the heart of the matter. We do not merely take the exemption from paying in. We also give up the right to ever collect a single dollar of the benefits. We waive them entirely. We do not want them. Because to take the government's check in our old age or our trouble would be to say that the community cannot care for its own, and that would be a kind of failure and a kind of faithlessness, an admission that we need the state to do what God gave the church to do. We would rather care for our own aged and our own sick and our own widows ourselves, as we always have, and owe nothing to any government for it and take nothing from it. It is not that we want something for nothing. It is that we want to give and to receive only within the family of the church. And I will tell you of one more thing, because it shows how far our people will go to keep this way of life, and how the outside world once tried to take it from us. There came a time, not so many years ago, when the state insisted that our children must attend the public high school, past the 8th grade, and we would not, because we believe our children are better formed for our life by learning it at our own hands, in our own one-room schools and on our own farms, than by being sent off into an education that would draw them away from us. And so some of our fathers were taken to court over it, and it went all the way up to the highest court in the land. And in the year 1972, in a case that bears the name of one of our own, that court ruled that our right to live and raise our children according to our faith outweighed the state's wish to school them its way. It was a great and rare thing, and it let us go on forming our own young people for our own life, which is the very thing that keeps a community like ours able to care for itself, generation after generation. And you see how it all locks together, once you look. The reason we can promise to catch one another is that we raise our children to belong to the community, to want to stay in it and serve it and be bound to it. Cut that off. Send the young away to be formed by the world, and in a generation the whole thing unravels. For there is no barn raising without young men who were taught from the cradle that they owe their neighbor their strong back. So the school and the barn and the aid box are not three separate things either. They are one living body, each part keeping the others alive, and that is why we guard the raising of our young as fiercely as we do, because it is, in the end, what makes all the rest of it possible. Now I have to be honest with you about the cost of all this, because there is one, and I will not hide it. This way is not free, and it is not easy, and it may not even be possible for you where you are. First, it asks something the modern world finds very hard. It asks that you yield yourself to the community, that you accept its ways and its rule over your life, that you be, as our word Gelassenheit has it, a part and not the whole, willing to submit and to serve. A man who wants above all to be his own master, to owe nothing and answer to no one, cannot have what we have, because the price of being carried by your community is being bound to it. Second, it works only because the community is truly there, tight and whole and near, and many of you live scattered among strangers, with no such community to fall into, and I know that, and I do not say this to shame you for lacking what you were never given. And third, understand that we are trading one kind of security for another, the impersonal safety of a policy for the personal safety of a people, and each has its price, and I do not stand here to tell you that you are foolish for carrying insurance in a world that has no barn raising in it. I only want you to see clearly that there was another way, that it is real, that we live inside it still, and that it is built not on money, but on the plain and costly promise that we will show up for one another, at dawn with our tools every time. So here is what I would leave you with. The next time you hear that the Amish carry no insurance, Do not think us reckless or freeloading. Think of 100 buggies coming up a lane at dawn to raise a burned man a new barn and send him no bill. Think of a people who decided, long ago, that they would rather be bound to one another than insured against one another's absence. Whether you could build such a thing where you live, I cannot say. But I can tell you it is worth knowing that it exists, and worth asking yourself the question it puts to all of us, plainly. Now tell me in the comments below, tell me honestly, if your barn burned down tonight, who would come? How many people could you name who would show up at dawn with their tools and ask for nothing? And who would you show up for? The same way. I truly want to know, because that number, whatever it is for you, is the truest measure of security there is, far truer than any policy. Tell me your county too, and whether there is anything like this where you live. Next time, I am going to tell you the story of why we dress the way we do, the plain clothes, the beards, the hats, and the bonnets, for it is not a costume, and it is not for the tourists. It is 100 small daily choices that all say one quiet thing about who we belong to. Until then, think on who would come up your lane, and remember the people who carried one another through every trouble in this country with their own two hands. New things we are only just starting to remember.